Hey, hey, welcome to Film Fanatics. We are three film geeks discussing movies, both new and old. My name is Dan.
My name is Justin.
I'm Joe.
This week, M. Night Shyamalan takes us on a visit to Grandma's house. Michael Ealy appears to be the perfect guy. Greta Gerwig dubs herself Mistress America. And in our home media moment, Oscar-nominated foreign film Leviathan. We'll also talk about the latest crop of announced sequels and reboots, and discuss older films Mumford for this month's Listener's Choice, and the 1941 Gary Cooper comedy Ball of Fire. First up, let's talk about The Visit. Joe?
The Visit is the most recent M. Night Shyamalan movie. Apparently it's a horror comedy. Apparently. A single mother, played by Catherine Hahn, Dan, applause,
I love her, yeah.
finds that things in her family's lives go very wrong after her two young children, Rebecca, played by Olivia de Jong, and Tyler, played by Ed Oxenbould, I'm guessing that's from Alexander's Horrible No Good,
Yep.
visit their grandparents, whom she hasn't spoke to in 15 years. Now, the film is done in a found footage style, as Rebecca is filming her experience meeting these grandparents as some sort of adolescent self-exploration thing. There are laughs and scares that possibly ensue. This is a film that I have to say I have very, very conflicted feelings about. I feel like, I said this to Justin actually, just as a brief discussion earlier, but I think this summarizes it very well. I think that this film is evidence that Shyamalan is a director that is at war with himself. And it's a struggle because, I'll say this to the listeners, I go see these movies a lot, and I believe the First Look has these specials sometimes where the actors or the directors will try to promote their movies, and literally,
Yeah, like the pre-show.
it was quite sad. I'm not gonna lie, it made me. I'm not. This is not funny. This is not funny.
I think it's funny.
Well, you can laugh, but I legitimately feel bad for Shyamalan because it's the first time I've seen this director who's a big name who is literally basically begging you to remember his best movies from a decade ago and promising this will be something like that. Now, I know some people have been enjoying this one. For me, it was a pretty mixed bag. Now, I will say this much. There's definitely potential that at some point in time, Shyamalan was a great director. He did one of my favorite movies of all time, Unbreakable. You guys know about that one.
Oh, yeah.
Also, The Sixth
Did
Sense.
that for an old classic that you brought.
Yeah, I mean, literally, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. He also did The Sixth Sense and Sign, which were very good movies as well. But since then, it's just been a lot of bad stuff. This movie had elements of good drama, I think. There were definitely some ideas in there that may have been good for these characters, but like everything else, it's so underdeveloped. I will say as well, the performances were for the most part pretty good. I actually was fairly impressed by the two child actors. The writing I can't speak to, the characterizations and the development, really badly handled, but they still managed to make it entertaining to watch, and I definitely applaud the two young actors there. Both did a good job. And I will say that for once, in a long time, the twist was actually decent. It actually something that I admit was predictable. I predicted basically what the twist was early in the movie. Not the specifics, but I knew the main aspect of it. I figured out. But it logically made sense. It wasn't something completely out of left field nobody could have guessed. So there are some positives that make this movie a significant improvement from most of Shyamalan's most recent stuff. But does that make it a good movie? Does that make it the proof that Shyamalan should return to form when he's back at Sixth Sense level? Not by a long shot. This movie was banked as a horror comedy, and I'll admit I was laughing, but I think for all the wrong reasons. I think the scares are almost completely non-existent. The humor, some of it kind of works, I guess, but it's all Shyamalan's standard quirky, weird stuff, so how is it different than any of his other things? It's almost like he said, I'm going to take all my tropes that I've used instead of the plot and narratives I was known for, that I had in The Happening or any of these other films, and just call it a comedy now because people laugh at it anyway. You know, I think it's time for him to give up.
Wow.
I think it's time to quit. I'm sorry. This one wasn't safe for me. I'll leave it with the C-.
Okay. Well, it certainly has an identity crisis. I think it doesn't know whether it is meaning to scare the audience or tickle the funny bone. Sometimes you can get away with that in a more like campy horror film, but I don't necessarily think this was meant to be campy. I think it was mostly meant to be scary, and then they throw in a couple of, you know, chuckle-worthy moments here and there. I do agree that the twist was decent. I actually didn't really call it. I guess because it wasn't billed as with a classic Shyamalan twist, like some of his other movies have been.
That's true.
So I wasn't really necessarily expecting it. So I did like it, but in its reveal, it sort of negates half of what happens earlier in the film.
Exactly.
And I can't go into specifics, obviously, but you know what I'm talking about.
Big time. Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
And the found footage, which I'm super sick of anyway,
Yeah.
it sort of made sense in spurts,
And then
not at all in others. And all of it wasn't found footage anyway.
No.
Because there were some shots, like when they're in the car driving, for example, where the camera is like completely steady. There's no way that a little kid holding the camera is...
I'll say
so obviously that's
that
not
good?
found footage.
I'll say, too, if you want to make something more believable for found footage, get a slightly less quality camera. I'm not saying it has to be horrible, but like this is still obviously studio-grade Shyamalan level camera. I mean...
Gallows style.
Yeah, exactly. Do it if you're... No. but I'm saying if you're going to make it seem like it is this kid who's fairly amateur, you could be a little bit messier, and I think that's okay.
Yeah, I agree. I thought Ed Oxenbould, who was super adorable in Alexander, I didn't think he was really rising to the role here. I liked the girl that played the sister. I thought she did a good job.
Yeah.
And I admit, his script wasn't great to begin with the whole rapping bit. But just some of his reaction shots were not, I don't think, the best.
Well, I think that was also the kid dealing with the writing, too. Like, there was a point where the evil grandma's clawing at the door, and they're just saying, hey, let's open the door. Why don't you open the door? And they're like, stop talking about it and just open the door. We got to do it. Like, yeah, it was kind of an iffy line read.
I just didn't buy that he was that scared, to be honest. I know Justin's going to be all over this because he didn't even like him in Alexander. So I can only imagine, Justin, what you're going to say about this. I don't think he was good here, to be honest.
I thought he was okay.
But overall, I can't say I want the guy to hang it up. I know you are a big fan of him closing up shop. But, I've been watching Wayward Pines on Fox. I think he's doing really well with that. Maybe TV is a better avenue for him. Maybe films are not for him.
Maybe.
I'm a little bit above you, Joe. I leave The Visit with a C+. Justin?
Well, I'm going to disagree with you, Joe. I don't think he needs to hang it up. But Shyamalan is a has-been. Sixth Sense was great. Unbreakable, almost as good. And to some extent, Signs is pretty entertaining. Great score. But The Visit comes across like a man's desperate plea to get back in the loving favor of his viewers. And to be frank, missing the mark almost completely. I gotta give him some points for being better than The Last Airbender and After Earth. And having, like you both said, gentlemen, a fairly coherent twist. But it's just not enough to get him even remotely on track with his best. Oxenbould, surprisingly, Dan...
You liked him?
Didn't hate him as much as I did in Alexander. He still has a lisp problem, but it's nowhere near as bad as in Alexander.
But see, just as an aside, I think it works for Alexander because, he's a cute little precocious kid. Here, he's, 13, I guess?
Something like that.
He barely looks 13.
I don't know. Yeah, the lisp didn't work in this one.
With the rapping.
Or the rapping.
The rapping just didn't work.
Mariah!
Or the screaming of the names.
Or the horrible running gag. Thank you for bringing that up,
that was
Joe.
bad.
I thought it was kind of...
I feel like that's how they were trying to get away with the PG-13 by not having him swear, but it was corny.
There we go. And then, even at the end, when they try to blur the two, and they try to, sneak puns in where it's starting to get intense, it was just awkward. I felt incredibly disturbed.
Yeah.
I understand where you're coming from, Joe, in terms of him really trying to show that he can be this good again. But I feel like we're just not even close to those days. I don't think he should hang it up, but I do think he needs to just go on hiatus for a little bit. I leave with a D+.
Well, so how would you remedy it then? Obviously, just saying write better scripts is the real answer, but obviously maybe he doesn't have that in him anymore.
All right.
So, other than hanging it up, what do you recommend? Maybe directing other people's scripts?
All right, well, okay. Maybe hang it up's a little too harsh, but the man has his own particular style that has not worked in a long time. Mm-hmm. He's tried to do the same basic thing, the same basic elements. It doesn't work. Maybe he only had a couple of good films completely his in him. Maybe he could direct other scripts. That's possible. I think he should just consider doing what I suggested for Seth MacFarlane. Maybe go a different direction. Because my favorite aspect of this movie was one aspect that's actually probably the best part of his earlier films wasn't necessarily the supernatural element, but the human element, the drama, is really the best part, I think. And if he sticks to that without delving away from these quirks he falls into, that's fine, because if you track it, each of the movies that gets worse, which each one that comes out, it's because they detract more from the human element and go into the quirk and the atmosphere and the Shyamalan tropes, basically. He gets buried in that.
Well,
so if he tried straight drama, like I said, they were underdeveloped, but the dramatic scenes of this movie, the girls' issues, the son, even to some extent with the flashback, the relationship between Catherine Hahn and her parents, like
I liked that element.
There are some good aspects there that if they were fleshed out and you just did that and you didn't have any supernatural elements, I think it could be possible.
But here's the thing, Joe. He's already been playing with those for several years. We had The Last Airbender. Missed completely.
I wouldn't consider that a straight family drama.
No.
Was that more of an action movie? I didn't see it.
No, but there was no any of the like typical Shyamalan tropes. There was no gigantic twist.
That's true, but that was also adapting something else. That's very different than what he's talking about.
That's fair. But then we have After Earth, where there is no twist. There's just him trying to build up a franchise and failing miserably.
But that's not supernatural either. I think Joe's point is maybe veering away from the supernatural elements.
Supernatural, science fiction, grandiose. You're right. Big epics don't work for him. After Earth,
I would say After Earth is not a drama.
What I'm saying is the best parts about Sixth Sense and Unbreakable, you could argue besides the supernatural elements, are the quiet drama. And I would say that's true with The Visit as well. So if he does that, maybe more realistic drama, I'm saying no supernatural, no science fiction, no adaptations. Just try that. Maybe there's something there. You know, he's been trying to basically redo the same cycle of big, grandiose epic for 15 years, and it hasn't been working.
But I also feel like that's what he was trying to do with The Visit. It's like, okay, I need something cheap. These found footage movies are really cheap, and I can shoot them on an amateurish camera, and they don't cost a whole lot. So,
well, once again, though, Justin, he was still obviously going with the hook that it might be supernatural, and another one of his negatives, like he did with Lady in the Water and Happening, is he pokes fun of himself and his audience and critics by mentioning those things. Ooh, the grandmother is talking about aliens abducting them. Obviously, you're supposed to be going into thinking there's ghosts or demons or aliens or something. So even though it may not have necessarily been that, I won't go into the film if you haven't seen it, it still feels very supernatural in its atmosphere.
Joe, okay. Wayward Pines is... Now, I'm only 3 episodes in, so maybe it gets more supernatural. But thus far, it is I would call it a mystery drama.
Okay.
There's a murder. Now, there's weird things happening. I would say if...
Twin Peaks?
Well, sort of Twin Peaks-ish, okay?
Uh-huh.
I'll go with that. And we don't exactly know what's happening yet.
Is that Terrence Howard?
Terrence Howard is in it, yes.
Okay.
Juliette Lewis is in it. Ryan Phillippe... Ryan Phillippe's in the other mystery drama I'm watching. Matt Dillon.
Well, I'll tell you this. I've seen trailers for that. I must not have realized it was Wayward Pines. I had no idea that was Shyamalan. It doesn't look Shyamalan-esque to me at all.
No. And here again, based on something else. I think maybe his writing is part of the problem.
His own writing? Because
this is adapted from a book series, and I guess there's 3 books in the series that he turned into one 10-episode show. Mm-hmm. But... I mean, he wrote The Visit, and it's obviously got, as we've all said, a big identity crisis.
Like a lot of his movies.
So maybe it is in the writing. You know, he cranked out a couple of really good ones at the beginning. Well, now, I don't think did he write After Earth? I know the story was Will Smith. But did he write the script?
You know, I'm not 100% sure.
I think he might have, though.
I could see it.
Because Will Smith didn't write it. He just did the story.
I could see it.
You know, so here again.
All right. I'll say this.
Script issue.
Like, in terms of the pacing and the shots, I've never had a problem with Shyamalan. Mm-hmm. I mean, and he's obviously able to get some great performances out of his actors. But you're right. I do think the biggest crutch has been his writing. I think he's had too much control over his own projects. Right. And that's why he's repeating the same things, which maybe he can't get enough out of.
And I'm all for originality, but if you're going to go for the original aspect, give us situations that are coherent. This movie also, yes, the twist is good, but it's also falling into that same category of the more you think about the twist, the more plot holes and issues you have.
Well, yeah, like I said, it basically negates the first half of the movie, which is, a twist is fine, but if it doesn't make sense with the rest of the story,
still a big problem.
Then you're lost. The show, the TV show.
Mm-hmm. And once again, his obligation to do twists in his movies have mostly been failures.
Yeah. Up next, we have The Perfect Guy. This is a thriller starring Sana Lathan as Leah Vaughn, a career woman tired of waiting for her boyfriend of 2 years, played by Morris Chestnut, to pop the question. So she breaks up with him and begins to date an attractive man she keeps running into, the very charming Carter Duncan, played by Michael Ealy. Everything seems wonderful at first, but after an angry encounter at a gas station where Carter loses his temper on a stranger that he thinks is hitting on Leah, she starts to back away from the relationship. Carter can't take no for an answer, and when he sees her back together with her ex, he snaps completely. The Perfect Guy isn't really all that different from a dozen other stalker thrillers, and does get more predictable as it goes on. But, due to some strong performances and a genuinely creepy as opposed to hammy vibe, it did make me quite uneasy most of the last half, which means that it was doing its job. It's much better than No Good Deed, which had a similar theme last year. And honestly, I think it's probably much better than it has any right to be. I leave The Perfect Guy with a B-. Joe did not see this one, so Justin will go to you next.
Well, similar to January releases, you really can't expect much from September. But The Perfect Guy is just a lazy Fatal Attraction knockoff. The writing's horrendous, the editing even worse. I got super whiplash in terms of all the little fast cuts that they kept cramming in every single scene. In a simple table room scene that lasts like 5 minutes, there's maybe 30 cuts. It's ridiculous. And as a result, the movie just flies around with little sense of pace or frankly rationality. It never gets boring, and goodness knows Ely's really truly committing to his villainous.
He always does.
No,
It's weird seeing him as a villain, though.
Yeah, I still don't entirely know how to feel about that, but
Yeah.
can't really fault him. But it's not enough to get this movie up to even possibly mediocre levels. It's just a lazy mess. I leave it with a D-.
Whoa, so you think worse... Oh, no, you give no Good Deed an F, didn't you?
No, I give it a D, actually.
Oh, so this is worse for you than No Good Deed.
Elba.
Oh, man, that movie was
Elba
terrible.
At least I was relatively intrigued by that. This was just all over the place. Ely's, like I said, really trying to keep this movie afloat.
I really did not notice the quick cuts and the editing. It must not have affected me. But see, I was creeped out during it. I found the tone of it to be genuinely creepy. A lot more creepy than No Good Deed. And the villain, to me, makes more sense in this movie. No Good Deed, he just was like...
He hung out.
Evil guy is evil.
You know, and then she made a lot of dumb choices. She would, knock him down on the ground, and then instead of shooting him with the gun in her hand, she runs away, you know.
Yeah.
That was stupid.
Oh, the girl made plenty of dumb decisions here, too.
I don't know if that's true. I mean, she kept going to the police and saying the right things. In that end scene, she really was trying her best. I don't know. I don't think she made that many dumb decisions. Now, her friends, her wishy-washy friends, were
Just
terrible.
a wee bit.
She's got these friends, Joe.
Okay.
And she tells the one, the token white girl.
Of course.
She tells her, oh, you know, this man, I saw him throttle this guy at the gas station. I don't know if I want to be with him. Da, da, da. And she's like, oh, maybe it's an isolated incident. Don't worry too much about it.
What?
And then the next time she tells her, she's like, oh, girl, you got to get away from him. What are you still doing? Well, I was listening to you, I guess.
Yeah.
That was my mistake. No, I think she makes rational decisions. I think some of the people around her don't.
So maybe she has...
I don't know that Morris Chestnut, I understand he was trying to be the hero.
Because he's Morris Chestnut.
But it was
Sort of.
clear what was going to happen to him.
Yeah.
You know? You said it's a Fatal Attraction knockoff. They all are.
It's true.
Name me one stalker thriller that isn't. The Gift notwithstanding, because that's not a romantic-based one.
Yeah, no, it's...
You know, anyone that's romantically charged.
Okay, but here's the difference. Most of them are at least sort of subtle about the fact that they're a Fatal Attraction knockoff. There's a certain scene where she has a pet cat, and he looks over at her, and you can easily tell they were thinking, well, if we go the way we want to go, it's going to be a Fatal Attraction knockoff. Complete and utter ripoff. So
Yeah, but it's not because they don't do that. The ripoff is Single White Female or The Roommate.
Also never saw it, but I'll take it.
Okay, well, so then you don't know. This is definitely veering off from the Fatal Attraction path that those movies took pretty directly, I would say. Now, Single White Female also wasn't romance-based. That was roommate-based. As was The Roommate. Although I think she was into her in The Roommate. I forget.
honestly, the only real frame of reference I have for Fatal Attraction is probably Swim Fan, which is
Okay.
which is
Oh.
Well, that one I never saw.
which is basically
Owie.
same thing.
Yeah, I'll have to give you that.
Somebody remembered Swim Fan,
Never
ladies
saw
and
Swim
gentlemen.
Fan.
Well, I did as a kid, but
Okay.
it was disturbing, bad, but
Yeah.
but they got the creepiness right. I actually kind of did want to see this one. I couldn't. If I had to wager what my grade would probably be, though,
I think you're in the middle. I think it's a C.
I would think it's in the C's.
Probably.
I looked at this movie and I'm like, I will probably enjoy it as a guilty pleasure,
Yeah.
which will subvert all the problems I have with it. Like, it looked entertaining. I did want to see it, actually.
Yeah, I thought they got the creep factor right. I thought the performances were decent enough for what it called for.
So, remind me, did you like this one better than Boy Next Door?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Boy Next Door was in the C range for me.
I thought so.
Yeah. See, that's more by the numbers, I think, than this, also. I don't know. I mean, they're all pretty standard issue with varying degrees of difference.
That's fair.
I think The Boy Next Door was going for more campy than this was, Joe. This was, I think, going
It wanted
for
to be straight up thriller.
For straight ahead thriller. For me, it was. For me, it worked in that regard. And also, to some degree, The Boy Next Door worked as a campy thriller as well. But I would say this is the better film. Yeah.
Okay, figured.
All right, well, moving on, we've got Mistress America. Joe?
And Noah Baumbach's spiritual follow-up to Frances Ha, in my opinion, college freshman Tracy, played by Lola Kirk, her life is turned upside down by her adventurous soon-to-be sister-in-law, Brooke, played by Greta Gerwig. Tracy attempts to be a writer, struggles with relationships and college life, and finds a hero figure in Brooke as she observes her as she tries to build her own restaurant franchise, leading to reconciling with her former fiancé to gain financial support. This movie... Okay, when I say that it's a spiritual sequel to Frances Ha, it really is, but that's kind of being generous. I feel like it basically is Frances Ha, but just with adding in the extra character of Tracy for a different perspective. So you have a different storyline there, but if you take the character of Brooke, it's like the same character. And I like Greta Gerwig, but I'm thinking the whole time, wow, this is literally basically the same type of story we've seen before. Now, I think that the storyline with Frances Ha was a little more coherent because it was just focused on her and the shifting vignettes. But this movie has the strength of Tracy's storyline, but I felt like it was two Greta Gerwigs, just kind of bouncing off each other. And while that was entertaining and interesting, I felt like there wasn't as much difference in their characterizations based on the performances, even if the writing was a little bit different. So it was kind of more subtle. I did like the stories. I liked the characters, but I felt for the most part it was basically turning the same wheels we saw before. And it's not quite as even in terms of the storylines themselves. Like for each act is kind of different. You've got Tracy's development herself in the first act, which feels like its own storyline. And then you have her and Brooke meeting together, and it's just like a series of adventures as she reflects on everything she's learning. And then it becomes like a play once they get to the house of the brother-in-law, which was my favorite part.
I agree.
Because it has the most going on. Other than that, I thought like, well, this is just kind of like Frances Ha, Baumbach-esque stuff, just kind of this guy postulating on his own things like a lot of directors do. You know, it was kind of Allen-esque, I think would be a good example. A little more entertaining, obviously, but kind of the same indie structure, it's the same dialogue, the same flow, but it really doesn't get interesting, really, until that final 30 minutes or so. But I do think it has a decent resolution. It's a good story. I enjoyed the movie. I just feel like it's basically exploring all the same things we've seen before from him. And Gerwig was great, but so far, not that much range. So I leave this one with a B. It was pretty good.
Okay. Justin?
Baumbach might be the hipster director to end all hipster directors, who I apparently hate, even though the lowest grade I have for one of his movies is a B-. But I have to give him credit. He knows people, and more importantly, he knows how they talk. That doesn't mean this leads to the best characters and story. Arguably, the biggest flaw this movie has is sometimes it's hard to get behind these characters because they are so pompous and unlikable at times. But the relatability makes it easier to connect as the story gets progressively more engaging as it goes along and leading to a really solid conclusion. I agree, Joe. I liked both characters. Are they a little Gerwig-esque? Yes, but I was legitimately curious as to where Tracy's story was going.
You pointed it out well, Justin. I mean, I didn't say that they were unbelievable or badly written, but are they likable? And that speaks to something interesting narratively, where to create a character you can like, even if they have flaws you can't get behind, but it's realistic. So it's kind of a balancing act.
I want to say like the first third of the movie is a little rushed for me.
Pretty uneven, I'd say.
Jumps around a little bit. It gets better as it goes along, but honestly, for the honest performances, pretty good dialogue, and some genuinely funny moments, I'm leaving Mistress America with a B+.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's easy to write for a character who is unlikable and yet has no idea she's unlikable and make her funny instead of irritating. And I think they've done that here. Gerwig and Baumbach, who co-wrote the script, have offered us up this really great, flawed mess of a character who is Frances Ha, basically. You're right, Joe. You're not wrong on that. But Gerwig plays her to perfection. I think the interplay between her and Lola Kirk is great. And how each of their characters grows is really well done as well. These are real characters. They have real conversations, and Baumbach does that very well, as he typically does, I think. The tone of the film does switch gears, from that first half hour. And Joe, you're right. It's sort of in like 3 installments, really.
It's like 3 little films.
And I think it's the better for it, though, because I do think it sort of builds, each one builds on the others. And I think they are increasingly good as it goes along.
I agree.
Of the 3, I have to say, certainly before we even are introduced to Gerwig's character, I don't think it's lifeless, but it's just not as interesting until the 2 of them get together.
Yeah.
Cool idea.
Yeah. But I do think the directing here is not quite as on point as in some previous Baumbach films. I think he doesn't know how to end some of his scenes. I appreciate that he doesn't always try and end on a big laugh, but it comes off as awkward. It'll be like Gerwig saying something and then like sort of just shooting her reaction for 3 or 4 seconds and then cut to the next scene. That was kind of weird. Some of the rapid-fire directing doesn't always complement the rapid-fire dialogue either. There was a lot of the one person says something, let's, shoot them. Then the other person, About Last Night did last year, that really bothered me. It was only in like maybe 1 or 2 scenes that they do that.
But it is noticeable,
yeah,
you're right.
It's definitely noticeable. But the more I see Gerwig in these types of roles, I do feel like she'd be appropriate to headline a sitcom or something rather than a series of these films where she's basically just slight variations of the same character. For now, though, I think it's still working for her, and for Baumbach, I also leave Mistress America with a B+. But I would like to see this character branch out, because Gerwig is very adept at playing her.
Honestly, I probably would give it a B+ if they just called her Frances. I'm serious. If they had if this is like a series of films following the same character and adventures, that's fine. But don't pretend like it's something. It's the same.
Yeah,
it's the same character.
It is a slight variation on the theme, but if you told me that this was Frances Ha 2, I wouldn't think anything. I mean, I guess the only real difference is New York versus L.A.
Later. That's true. Later on, yeah. But it could almost be a prequel then, or something like that,
or something. Yeah.
But it's very similar.
It is. I can't deny that. Which is why I think she knows this girl. Have her headline a One Broke Girl or something. Have it be funny, because obviously I don't like that show, but I think she would do very well with that, because she gets the character.
Yeah.
And since she co-writes her, because she co-wrote Frances Ha as well.
Oh, I could tell it's a very personal sort of storyline.
So just do it.
Yeah, just
don't.
Just if you want to play this character, that's fine, but don't pretend like it's not the same variation.
I'm big on everybody going to TV on this episode, apparently.
I guess.
Shyamalan, Greta Gerwig, just do it already.
Well, to be fair, everybody's going to TV now anyways. So.
Well, it is the place to be.
Though I gotta ask, if you made an interesting point about it having a format that's sort of like 3 mini movies. Mm-hmm. Do you think it might have evaded some of the Frances Ha territory if they had decided to sort of tell the film in vignettes?
No,
because I think Frances Ha was more in vignettes because of all the traveling. Yeah. Because we had talked about that when we did that for a new classic, that she, you wanted to see some more of the side characters, but the problem is Frances was only there for a weekend or a week, and then she goes to her next place. So, no, I think if anything, that would be more of a striking reminder of Frances Ha.
That's why I didn't like the first couple parts, because it seemed like it was so disjointed, because it was Tracy bouncing around, and then it was the 2 of them bouncing around, and then I liked it when they got together, They had the dialogue, they had the resolution in Connecticut.
And that neighbor.
And the neighbor, Harold, your writing's terrible. Favorite character in the movie, by the way.
He was great.
He was great.
He was great. And the pregnant woman was great as well.
Yes, pregnant woman. Really, like I said, everything about the final part worked really great. And it was also something different. It was something, he had to stay in one place, have a lot of characters together. Mm-hmm. It wasn't all focused on Frances Ha.
Right.
I know he loves her, and she does elevate everything, but it can get a little grating, if it's just her. And I think that's the fine line you walk with a character like that. Because I'll confess, I don't really like that character that much.
Okay.
But she is well written.
She is. I like her.
She reminds me of people.
Okay. See, she reminds me of people as well.
She's relatable.
But she's relatable.
She's the kind of person that but...
I would never be friends with this person.
Exactly.
But that's what I mean. I think it's hard to write that character.
It is.
And make her funny rather than grating. But for you, maybe a little more on the grating end.
She's on that line where, she's cute and all, but
at
the same time, there's just something about her that just kind of irritates you.
Right.
But it's never quite bad enough. I did think the scene where she's confronted by the old high school, that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Because it was fun. That was. Because I think that scene summarizes what's so interesting about the character, is that...
She's so out of touch.
She's so out of touch, and she's so unaware of herself, but really that scene was great because it proves the center of her character. She was not wrong in what she said.
Right.
But her handling of it was not good.
Right. Yeah, that's all true. All right, well, let's move into our home media moment, and that was Oscar-nominated foreign film Leviathan. Justin?
Alexei Serebrennikov plays Koya, a family man fighting to keep his land out of the clutches of a corrupt mayor, played by Roman Madyanov. As a result, Koya calls on his friend, an attorney named Dmitry, played by Vladimir Vidochenkov, to help him in the fight to protect his land and possibly investigate the mayor's side deals in the process. This is one of several movies that was nominated for Best Foreign Feature, and honestly, I think it's probably the least good of the bunch.
Whoa.
It's not that it's a bad film. It's more or less that it's an incredibly long-winded film with many parts. And it's not that all the parts are so bad, it's just that it only comes to life in spurts. So I'll have these moments where I'm really feeling the length, and then I'll be drawn in and I'll be invested, and then I'll be back to feeling the length again, and then just keep repeating over the course of the runtime. The performances are good, and the cinematography is great in some sections, but the wealth and perspective of humanity and giving everybody a backstory and development is fascinating, but easily could have trimmed at least 20 to 30 minutes of this movie, which costs the full emotional impact of this movie as a whole. I leave Leviathan with a B.
Joe?
I'm kind of on the same page with you, Justin. I think the best thing about this movie was the cinematography. I thought that it looked beautiful. I definitely got enraptured in a lot of these environments, and I liked the storyline. I liked the characterizations. I liked that it was very detailed, and it was a bit long-winded, but I liked that detail. Though I can't argue against the length. I think the pacing definitely was handled. They could have trimmed a bit at certain points to keep it flowing. But I really thought the performances were great. I thought it was a pretty well-done story. I will agree there are some pacing issues. You probably could chop off a good 20 minutes or so. But the movie looked great. I'm a little above you. I leave it with a B+.
Well, Justin, I agree with you. Of all of the foreign films that we've seen this year that were nominated for that foreign language category at the Oscars, Leviathan is my least favorite. But I do have to note, above all, the cinematography. The opening scene showing the different landscapes of the area and the beauty and the metaphor, really, of the waves crashing, as a sort of template for the whole movie that gets revisited again as the film concludes. It's just striking. Yeah. So that's the first thing you notice. After that, the characters are strongly written. I thought the mayor was a little bit cartoony, though, in his villainy. Yeah. Although I did find out after watching it that when they were drunk, they were drunk.
Oh.
They filmed each of those scenes, a lot, and typically they would take, the 7th or 8th or 9th take so that they were fairly sauced.
Genuine.
That seems like a very Russian way to do it.
It seems like a very Russian way to do it. So after I found that out, I was like, all right, so I guess maybe he's not really playing drunk cartoony. He just, that's how he is when he's drunk, this actor. But the acting is good throughout. What makes this a good foreign picture for me was I think it's a little more believable happening in a country like Russia. Mm-hmm. I think, if it were in the U.S., I don't know how plausible it would be. I'm sure it happens, but...
A lot of the stuff they're commenting, though, are like Russian problems anyway.
True.
So that might be why
You're right.
It wouldn't fit quite as well.
And I think that's, what makes it more believable that way. Mm-hmm. That, along with the cinematic backdrop, sort of remind us where we are every step of the way.
No doubt.
Definitely.
And it makes it a bit chilling. I do agree, though. It is easily 20-plus minutes too long.
It's a little long.
This could have clocked in about an hour and 55 and been completely fine. I do think maybe that is the problem, Justin. They try to give every single person their due.
Exposition, yeah.
It's not really necessary. Maybe the 4 or 5 main ones. The mayor, the lawyer, the guy. Although I did like the tearing down of the house.
Oh, yeah, that was a great scene.
Cool cinematography.
That was very good.
For sure. But I'm with you, Justin. I give it a B. Joe, I don't think you've seen more than just this in Wild Tales, because you didn't see Ida and you didn't see Timbuktu. Timbuktu was my favorite.
I know that you guys didn't like Ida very much.
I was in the B range as well for that, but I do think it's better than this. It's more memorable.
I was going to say, Ida was significantly better shot. This is very, very good cinematography-wise. You can't forget some of the imagery that Ida offered up.
Well, I guess so far Wild Tales is my favorite.
Yeah, I would say so. Wild Tales was good. Ida was the one that won.
Yeah.
So at some point, maybe you'll want to watch that. But
maybe.
I mean, this was good, but yeah, just too long. It was a bit of a slog to get through.
Yeah, it took me a couple sittings, actually.
Yeah, I confess it did for me, too.
Is that right?
I had to take a few breaks.
I watched it straight through, but I felt the length, that's for sure, on that one. All right, well, before we move into our double feature of older films, it's time once again to revisit the reboots and the sequels. We should make this a new feature, a monthly feature on the show, because it seems like every month we're talking about the hot new reboots of the day. I'm going to start with one that I am very passionate about in a negative way.
Okay, good.
And that is Mary Poppins.
Oh, I
This was just announced that they are going to sequelize Mary Poppins. It's not a reboot.
Good.
They're going to take it 20 years into the future, which means none of the original cast can play themselves because it's only 20 years and not 40 years into the future. So everyone's out, but it will focus on the Banks family. And the only name thus far that has been bandied about for the title role is Anne Hathaway.
No.
Well, I'm okay with that. She can sing. It's going to be a musical again. She can sing. We've seen this. Does she have the charm of a Julie Andrews?
Not even remotely.
Well,
don't be too
okay.
These
are sort of rhetorical questions at this point, Justin. I know you hate Anne Hathaway. I got it.
You hate Anne Hathaway?
But I mean,
so much random accusations of hatred.
Tell me the one movie you like Anne Hathaway in. I rest my case.
That wasn't very quick. Usually he's like, got it.
No, it's more or less of a. Are we going to be able to play? Is great performance bad movie applicable?
Sure.
Ella Enchanted.
Okay, well, I never saw Ella Enchanted, but I know you don't like her as a person. You think she's very smug, etc., etc. You can't deny that.
There's a lot of actresses like that, and actors, and people, and
not all of them. I mean,
I didn't say
Anne
all.
Hathaway
I said a
for
lot.
you.
Yeah, I think she's a little smug.
Right, you don't like her as a person. I think she's a fine actress. I thought she did great in Les Mis, and I'm sorry she deserved her Oscar for it. No. I think she's great in Devil Wears Prada.
Yeah. Also, I mean, great performances. Do I think they're as amazing as everyone makes them out to be? No, but
heck, I even liked her in Dark Knight Rises.
I thought she was fine in Dark Knight Rises as the Catwoman. Look, she did Princess Diaries 1 and 2 with Julie Andrews.
I thought that was fine.
So perhaps they... I mean, Disney has a good relationship with Julie Andrews. Maybe they asked her, hey, what are your thoughts? And she said, well, I like Anne Hathaway. I don't know.
That's like saying Daniel Radcliffe was with Alan Rickman in Harry Potter, so he should play Hans Gruber if there's a Die Hard reboot.
It happens a lot, though. Literally, like, a lot of times people get work for association.
I'm not saying that, but listen, Princess Diaries was a Disney movie, so obviously Disney has worked with her before.
That's fair.
Right? Again, she worked with Julie Andrews, so getting a blessing from that person might be nice. I think of anybody, she's not the worst choice. I don't.
Oh, no, you could do a lot worse.
Right. I think it's an all right choice. All right, well, who's better?
Well, to be honest, if it's set 20 years in the future from the first movie,
Right.
and Julie Andrews, I think, was probably older than
Early
Anne Hathaway
20s.
at the time, maybe around the same time, but she's definitely too young to play her then if it's in the future, right? Unless she's magical and doesn't age.
I was gonna say.
Is that the thing with Mary Poppins? I don't know much about the books or anything. So if she,
I don't
that's
think
why
it's going to be based on the books.
But even so,
It is based on many of the remaining books.
Really?
Yeah.
that's kind of cool.
Wow. That's.
So
I don't know how I feel
but
about that.
you're angry about this, you said, right? Or are you? You said angry.
I just... there's just one Mary Poppins, and it's Julie Andrews. And she can't do the role anymore because of her vocal cord. So even if they set it 40 years into the future, she can't do it. But I don't like when they do the sequel and it's not with the originals. I mean, look, I'll give you that Oz the Great and Powerful worked.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously you had James Franco playing Oz, and you had Mila Kunis playing the Wicked Witch. That worked, and that was Disney.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the worst idea, and if you get Anne Hathaway, okay. I just don't. Why? I don't see why.
Well, I'm happy to know that it's not a remake. Then I would have been.
Yes,
no,
if it was a remake, I'd be livid.
I'd be no, no, I'd be protesting.
Yes,
but it's a sequel / basically reboot. If it's one of those things, it's definitely not necessary. I kind of wish they weren't doing it, but if they do it well, it could be awesome.
Yeah, it might be like Toy Story 4, where I'm like, why does this have to exist?
And then it might be
once
good.
I see it, I'm gonna be like, oh.
So I mean, I'm kind
movie.
of on the fence about this one. I feel like this could be cool because I love Mary Poppins too, but it's definitely something that doesn't have to happen.
No.
But like I said, if you're gonna do it, just do it well.
There you go. All right. Well, Justin brought us the other reboot news, and that is the Robocop sequel to the 2014 Robocop. Joe, let's ask you first about this. You notoriously gave Robocop an F on this show.
Duck and cover, kids. Duck and cover.
So
I don't even know what to say. I think Justin just found this to make me mad. He wants to make me mad.
Did.
He wants to make me mad. He wants me to suffer, is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
No, even I was thinking like, no.
Like
I just know you. I'm like, it's
It wasn't
not
a good
good
reboot.
but you're like this. The 2014 one was a monstrosity.
Well,
so.
to me it was, and to a lot of people it was. I mean,
I didn't like it.
you guys might be a little more fair. I mean, sure, okay, maybe. I'll be honest, Justin. Looking back at the first movie, there are good things sprinkled throughout. But do I care? RoboCop's one of the greatest movies ever made to me. It doesn't need to be remade. And did they do it justice? Did they make another A+ movie? We can all agree, no.
I feel like it would be making another Total Recall with Colin Farrell.
Exactly. Let's just like a sequel. Now, I mean, I don't.
Also, it made no money. So I don't understand.
That's the thing. It wasn't.
Yeah.
It must have done well overseas.
I mean, they haven't like straight up announced it, but they have mentioned they're more or less open to it. Frankly, it's Sony and they're desperate, so
Yeah,
That's for sure.
They need a franchise. Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, I can't believe it's happening because I know a lot of people. The response from fans who care about RoboCop was not good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
No, it wasn't.
The people that liked this RoboCop movie, and this is pretty much fact, are people that never saw the first one or didn't really care much about it anyway.
Right.
Sad but true. So I just have to wonder if most of those audiences that actually thought, okay, that movie wasn't so bad, did you guys actually watch RoboCop beforehand? Because I think that would change opinions. Anyway, yeah, the first movie was terrible. They screwed up so many things about the character. The writing, I reviewed this movie before, like twice, you know, so I don't need to talk about it, but the fact it's getting a sequel just...
But I feel like if you're going to sequelize a reboot that tanked at the box office,
You better change
do
something.
Dread.
Yeah.
There you go.
Dread was it didn't do well financially, but neither did RoboCop. But was a very enjoyed film.
And
Audiences really took to Dread.
And it has kind of grown in its love over time. It's achieved cult status
I
now.
agree.
Easily.
People actually are trying to promote that one. There's Kickstarters. Like, people want a Dread. There's an audience for it somewhere. Nobody, even the people that, quote, liked the new RoboCop, aren't saying, yeah, definitely make a new one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so what an odd choice. You know, I mean, if it happens, I'll see it. I don't know if it could get much worse for me, but who knows? Maybe if they get a good director that's, hey, let's just take a second.
Do what we did in the last movie.
Yeah, let's see if we can at least try something new. Maybe I'll like the second one.
It wasn't good.
It can't get much worse for me.
No. All right, fair enough. Well, we've got our double feature here of older films, and we kick that off with Listener's Choice Old Classic. This is one actually from my parents. You guys have both brought old classics from your respective folks to the show, so finally we get one from my parents, and that is Mumford. This is a 1999 comedy film written and directed by Lawrence Kasdan about a new psychologist in a small Oregon town, both the man and the town, named Mumford, played by Lauren Dean. He befriends a young billionaire in town, played by Jason Lee, and a cafe waitress, played by Alfre Woodard, and tries to play matchmaker for them while falling for one of his own patients, played by Hope Davis. All the while, the other two therapists in town, angry that his unique approach is taking their patients away, try to uncover Mumford's secrets and take him down. Ted Danson and Martin Short also have roles. My parents have talked about this movie for years. I had never seen it, so they suggested watching it for the program. And much like another Kasdan favorite of theirs, The Accidental Tourist, I did not quite see the love that my parents found for it. It's certainly better than that movie.
Okay.
Don't get me wrong on that, but no, it's like cute basically, and the characters are appropriately offbeat. But aside from borrowing completely from Doc Hollywood, the dialogue just doesn't crackle as much as maybe it should. Kasdan has a pretty hit or miss track record with me. Accidental Tourist is terrible. I really like The Bodyguard. But this movie is just a little bit uninspired. It's very charming, but ultimately quite safe. If you're going to have your characters be offbeat, kind of go all the way with it. They're like little quirks here, little quirk there, you know. Martin Short, I don't think, does enough with his character. He sort of reins it in a little bit. And that's sort of how I feel about the whole movie. It all just seems a little bit reined in. So for me, I leave Mumford with a B. Justin?
No one can deny the writing credits of Lawrence Kasdan. I mean, the man wrote Empire Strikes Back and Raiders of the Lost Ark.
I mean, it can't, the guy can write movies.
He's
and
kind of
Force
awesome.
Awakens.
Is he back?
Yeah, he wrote The Force Awakens.
That's true. But
I might like it.
whether or not that speaks to his credits is to be determined. But his directing chops, after who knows how many years, still sort of leave me underwhelmed. Admittedly, it's better than The Accidental Tourist, aka Foot Fetish the movie, and the idea is interesting, but it gets bogged down by too many things happening all at the same time, and an extremely dark backstory about midway through Act 2. The characters are likable, and the takeaway is respectable, in regards to we all just need someone to listen to us. But as a movie, it's a bit on the erratic side. I'm with you, Dan. It's charmingly erratic, but it's incredibly erratic nonetheless. I leave Mumford with a B-.
Okay, Joe, how about for you?
Well, I agree that it is kind of safe and it's borrowing from the small town story you've seen before, mostly Doc Hollywood.
What a movie, by the way.
Which is funny because I feel like Doc Hollywood, in a way, embodies it the most because it's the safest of safe, but somehow it's more inclusive.
Well, no one's more charming than Michael J. Fox,
That's
one thing.
That's the thing. I mean, it's just, it has that charm. It's simple,
Yeah.
but I don't know. It definitely flowed better. It had a better sense of what it was in this one. I do agree it does become a little more erratic, but I did like the humor. I did think that the whole poke at psychology was pretty cool. And I do agree that it's mostly rated with the quirks, but that one storyline, though, I disagree. I thought that the one gentleman with the sexual deviations,
yeah.
that was actually followed through, I thought, pretty well. I actually liked the way that went.
I liked it, but I wish the execution was a little bit better.
I wanted a little more of it, but it's like a lot of things in the movie, everything was bouncing around so much with different ideas that a lot of those side characters and their individual stories were cut off. Like Martin Short was barely in the movie.
Right.
Tony Danza, barely in the movie.
Ted Danson.
Not Tony Danza. Ted Danson, barely in the movie. So there was a lot of possibilities that were just kind of cut off. But I thought the dialogue popped a little more for me. Okay. I did like the characters, and this is where I think I'm a little higher than you guys. The tone was weird with the dark backstory, but it actually gave the movie tension, which I liked. And
yeah, it was the one thing about the movie that wasn't necessarily safe.
that wasn't safe. And I mean, did it jive well perfectly? No. But if it hadn't been in there, it would have been totally forgettable. And
Definitely.
And I liked the dark backstory. I just thought it was really kind of oddly placed.
No, it was compelling. It was just strange.
It's like, yeah, because you have this fairly quirky, little safe, small town, comedy, and then noir freaking, like, just weird. Like, I liked it, but a little higher than you guys. I thought it was pretty good. Leave with a B+.
Okay. Yeah, I think maybe if they had taken away one or two of the patients and had a little more focus on some of the others. Like, Ted Danson really didn't even need to be in the movie at all.
I think he was just there to hang out.
You know, and at the time, certainly, him and Martin Short had the biggest names for the marquee. You know, Jason Lee was still kind of just starting out.
Jason Lee's character wasn't super safe. I mean, the whole sex bot thing was a little...
Yeah,
that was a little risky.
It didn't go anywhere, but...
Yeah, like, it didn't go anywhere. It was just sort of... It was quirky.
I don't know. You say that they don't go anywhere. I feel like it's one of those instances where certain characters, certain scenes say all they need to say with a few lines. Like, I think you learn a lot about Jason Lee with his feelings about relationships in one scene, which is like, I think goes pretty far.
Yeah, I would say his character, even more than Mumford himself, is probably the most defined character in the film.
Yeah.
Jason Lee.
And just a question. Mumford's there, but where's the son? I was like looking for him the whole time.
Mumford's son.
Wow, that would be awesome.
My parents enjoy it.
Your parents have very, very lost 90s taste in movies.
Yes, they do.
Apparently.
They do. They have their likes.
It's interesting.
Yeah, big Kasdan fans, apparently.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move into our final movie. That's the Oscar A to Z film, and we're up to 1941's Ball of Fire. It had 5 nominations: Best Music, Best Score, Sound, and the 2 for our A to Z list, Best Actress for Barbara Stanwyck, and Best Story. Justin?
Gary Cooper plays Professor Bertram Potts, one of 8 individuals working on the latest edition of an encyclopedia, and minimal knowledge of the outside world apart from observations and book smarts. However, when Potts runs into nightclub singer Sugar Puss O'Shea, played by Barbara Stanwyck, sparks slowly start flying while she tries to avoid her boyfriend and murder suspect gangster Joe Lilac, played by Dana Andrews, who she's trying to testify against. Billy Wilder strikes again as screenwriter on the Oscar-nominated front, and while this is certainly not on par with The Apartment, he definitely has a genuine knowledge of what's going to translate well to screen, what's going to be funny, and how to get these characters in engaging situations. It gets a little too silly at times, most notably near the start where it's kind of hard to buy their encyclopedia job when no one seems to entirely understand what an encyclopedia is. But what Ball of Fire's got in spades is charm and charisma. I really found myself attached with each character, and the interplay is pretty engaging. It's truly at its best in, I'd say, the last 20-25 minutes, where we see the group sort of have their own little aura of vengeance against Lilac's gangster buddies. For being sort of an escapist rom-com, it's definitely fun. I leave with a B-.
B-?
Not this again.
Falls into the fun, but
like a lot of positives.
Don't do it again.
Okay.
Falls into the fun but fluffy range.
Okay. Joe?
I think that this movie really does a good job of balancing that comedy with all these likable characters and some pretty fresh writing there with a decent romance and actually integrating it with some drama and gangster elements. Like, the writing for the setup is really cool. I think all these old guys working together, they have a lot of great lines, a lot of good chemistry together. I think that there's some good development for the main characters and their situation, and it's also very well shot. It's well paced, very enjoyable, a lot of fun. I think a lot of the awards it got nominated for, I think that a lot of them well deserved. I love this movie. I gave it an A. So
wow.
Oh,
not really.
Right.
Well, that's an appropriate grade for what you said about it.
Yeah, gangster movie. So I automatically love it.
I'm a little bit under you, Joe, but I'm pretty much with you. I think Stanwyck is perfectly sultry, a great sparring partner for Cooper, and the dopiness of his male counterparts and the parts about defining slang is definitely amusing. The sex-crazed one of the bunch. I liked him. I thought that was very risque for 1941. He was really making a lot of sex jokes. But oddly, the most intriguing part of the film is the gangster storyline.
Which is weird.
Which is weird for a romance. So I think I maybe took it down a little hair for that. But, that closing scene of how are they going to get out of this, I thought was super compelling.
Very good.
I liked that a lot. I can't say it's as funny as some of the earlier comedies we've seen. Certainly Wilder's own The Apartment, is on that list. But it's certainly got charm to spare. I leave it with an A-. I really thought it was very enjoyable.
Like, to speak to your point about the encyclopedia thing, we were making fun of it, but I think that was intentional comedy, though.
I'd say somewhat.
Oh, I think it was intentional. They're obviously bad at their job. That was part of the gag.
They're kind of
Bad at their job, but you would feel like, okay, these are very respected scholars, so they would at least have some idea of where they're going with this.
Well, Justin, you always bring up the rule of funny. I think there's a good part.
Yeah, I thought it was funny.
I didn't think it was that funny.
Well,
Rule funny is applicable in some regards, but I don't think this was one of them.
Hey, if it didn't work for you, that's fine. But I liked the humor. I thought, well, you know, my roots, I guess. I mean, I just thought a lot of the literature. I thought it was fun. Wordplay. It's enjoyable. I think it was just a lot of fun. It was a setup, though.
No, it's fun, but here's why I can't really give it a higher grade. When you compare this to Arise My Love, which was really funny and really engaging, and I feel like the main couple had really good chemistry. Mm-hmm. That also had its flaws too, but it's just nowhere near as good. It's fun, and I mean I enjoy the characters. I agree, Dan, the final setup with how they're trying to get out of it. And
I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, it was
a really nice motif, and it lends. I think the sound nomination is completely warranted. Mm-hmm. But the takeaway at the end of the day is, I don't think it's nearly as memorable as some of his later stuff, the likes of The Apartment, The 7-Year Itch, and so on.
Maybe not, but I mean, you're talking about some of the true greats of comedy here. I mean, you and I both gave The Apartment an A+.
It's true.
I've never seen 7-Year Itch, but obviously that's a classic. Some Like It Hot.
Yeah.
Another classic.
Can't speak to that one, but I'll give you that.
I like Gary Cooper.
Yeah, I thought Gary Cooper was really good in this.
Yeah.
And I thought Stanwyck was... I thought they had really good chemistry.
No, everybody was good in it.
I thought everybody was good. I mean, the guys were kooky.
But that was their thing.
I mean...
I thought the goal of this movie was to have fun. Like, this is kind of like the equivalent of, like, a big blockbuster at the time sort of thing. I was fine with it.
Yeah.
I just wish it had more substance to it, is my...
Well, you're right. If you compare it to The Apartment has a lot more substance, but that's also a very different movie.
It is.
I mean, I know it's a comedy, but that comedy had a lot of heavy drama in it.
Yeah.
This one, I think if a movie, like I've said, if it has a goal and it fills it, a good example, Justin, Mad Max. A lot of fun, substance, almost non-existent, but great movie.
Depends on your definition of substance, though.
Well,
the big overlying question in Mad Max, if you're referring to the latest one, is quite literally said in the first 5 to 10 minutes, who killed the world?
Mm-hmm. And the last 2 hours are
I
one
would
big chase.
say that,
Which people love because of the special effects and the acting and little else. I mean, which is fine, but I'm sorry, Justin, you gave it an A+. Substance, it's almost entirely style. And that's fine. It's okay.
Not necessarily. I mean... Depends on how
Justin,
you're reading it.
You're right. There are interpretations, but Dan, why do people love Mad Max mostly?
The visuals.
Because it's awesome. Because it's awesome to look at.
The 2-hour chase scene.
Are there some deep things in Mad Max somewhere? Probably. Are most people looking for it? No. You can have fun in a movie and give it an A+. Guardians of the Galaxy, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And this movie, you're right. Fluffy, sure. But definition of fluff.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think fluffy necessarily means bad.
I think you can have a good time with the movie without thinking too critically about it.
Well, look, okay, I'll give you another example. Joe, when we reviewed one of my all-time favorites for Old Classic, That Thing You Do. Your biggest criticism of that movie is...
I didn't think it was that.
It's completely safe and this and that. It is. I agree. That Thing You Do is a very fluffy movie.
But you love it.
Because it's a great movie.
See, there you go. It doesn't have to always have that extra...
Yeah, I don't think fluff necessarily always means lesser than.
No, it's not always a scarlet letter, but in this case, it's just... I feel like it's just mostly standard. It's fun, and I certainly had a good time watching it, but at the end of the day, it's just nowhere near as memorable as some of the later stuff to come and some of the other comedies and dramas that we've watched for Oscars.
Well, when I've seen some of these other comedies for Oscars we've seen a lot of them from this era recently.
Yeah.
I thought a lot of them were funny, but more standard. I think this one interjected some interesting storylines. I think the encyclopedia, although these characters, was very different for a setup.
I think the gangster plotline certainly.
The gangster plotline was pretty cool, I thought, to separate it from most. I think it had more to offer. And also, Justin, the cinematography, though, was so good in this. I think it stands out more than some of the ones we've seen.
No, fluffy does not necessarily mean a scarlet letter, but fluff does sort of undermine what could have been.
It can. I agree. And
which I feel like in some regards this does.
And it's open to interpretation, for sure. But, I used to think that way, too. If a movie was fluffy, it couldn't be the best, to me. And I would feel guilty about liking something like Guardians. Mm-hmm. So, I'm fine with that.
Yeah. I feel like there's more going on here than your standard rom-com.
I definitely think so, sure.
All right, well, that is going to do it for the show. Now, we're coming up on Horror Month. We're going to start that in 2 weeks.
Or Justin would say Horror Month.
Or Horror Month. Yeah. I'm gonna start mine with Pretty Woman.
You've never seen it, though.
What a whore. No, I've never seen it.
I could do it.
Yeah, you could. So, so we'll be doing our Listener's Choice Horror, of course. So if you do have a horror film that you'd like us to review for the show towards the end of October, go ahead and let us know about that. Joe, we're going to have Boldly Going now on your Merlin channel.
Yeah, we're going to film it after this episode, I think.
Yes, where the three of us will sit down and discuss various episodes of the various series in the Star Trek universe.
We're going to do it each week. It's going to be going chronologically through the first 4 series concurrently. Mm-hmm. And if we ever get there, we might do Enterprise. I vote no.
Yeah, you're not down with the Enterprise, and I'm okay with that. We'll start with the 4 biggies.
Yeah.
And go from there. And you can subscribe to our channel here, and as well enjoy us on the Facebook group. We do our 5-word reviews there weekly. That's Film Fanatics with an exclamation point, and the Twitter feed at Film Fanatics Pod. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you back here next time. Bye.